Hello everyone, how are you all doing? I'm Onesir JP, the announcer for the English broadcast here at Cosmos TV. Just like in 2020 and 2021, throughout this year, Cosmos TV, operated by the Multicultural General Welfare Center, is hosting the Journey with Cosmos TV and Multicultural Family Rights Season 3 program, sponsored by the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission. In 2020, it was broadcast in 6 languages, and in 2021, in 7 different languages. This year, Turkish, Chinese, and Russian were added, producing it in a total of 10 languages. Today, in the first episode, we invited an administrator to learn about the permanent residency and naturalization application of foreigners in Korea. Hello and welcome. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Could you please introduce yourself first?
반갑습니다.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mr. Lee Tae-Yong. My office is near Apgujeong Rodeo Station. If you pass by, give me a call and we'll have a cup of coffee.
A pleasure meeting you again, Mr. Lee. In the 7th episode of last year's broadcast, you talked about administrative procedures for deceased foreigners. Today, we will be discussing about visa and permanent residency. First, I would like to ask you, what are some of the advantages of acquiring permanent residency, F5, in Korea?
Yes, permanent residency, F5, is very convenient because it does not require visa renewal, and it is very advantageous because it can provide tax breaks, support for children's education, and even allow you to exercise voting rights in Korea.
I see. Permanent residency comes with various benefits. However, I heard that permanent residency requires a certain period of stay in Korea. Could you elaborate in more detail?
해외 동포가
In order for overseas Koreans to apply for permanent residency, the period of stay in Korea is 2 years. You have to live for 2 years to apply for permanent residence. And other visas such as resident, corporate investment, trade management, professor, painting instruction, researcher, technical guidance, professional occupation, art success, specific activity, and resident visa F2 need 5 years.
Yes, so you're saying that for overseas Koreans, it is just 2 years for the F4 visa, and for the rest of the visas, a period of stay of 5 years is required to get permanent residency. In addition to the period of stay, are there any economic situation requirements that need to be met?
네, 그렇죠. 2022년 6월 30일까지
Yes, that's right. If you apply by June 30th, 2022, you have to prove that your income is twice the Korea's PCI of 37,621,000 won in the previous year of 2020, and more than twice of Korea's PCI of 40,247,000 won in 2021 from July onwards. The proof is based on the income of the entire living family, not the individual, and when applying, it is said to be the proof of the previous year income, which is based on the tax payment to the tax office.
So this holds until June 30th of 2022. Furthermore, what basic knowledge of staying in Korea is required when applying for permanent residency?
한국어라든지 한국 문화에 대한
There are various tests in place for Korean language and culture, but now it is very simple. You become eligible if you complete level 5 of the social integration program and if you score more than 60 points in the comprehensive evaluation of Young.
기본 소양이 갖추어졌다고 보고 있습니다.
I see. Then what kind of questions are asked in the overall evaluation?
네, 우리나라 대통령이 누구냐? 서울시장 이름이 누구냐?
Yes, there are basic questions that any Korean may know, such as who is the president, who is the mayor of Seoul, where is the Gyeongbokgung Palace located, and what is our number 1 national treasure.
기본적인 내용이 출제되고 있습니다.
So basic questions that any Korean would know the answer to are asked. Could you elaborate on points like following the law and one's conduct?
품행 단정이라 해서
Dressing neatly or not is what can be called conduct, even though it's not a standard. What we are talking about here is whether we violated the law or not. First of all, 5 years have to have passed since the date when the sentence was terminated or decided not to be executed after being sentenced to imprisonment due to violation of Korean law. In addition, 3 years have to have passed since the date when a fine was paid, after being sentenced with a fine due to violation of Korean law. 5 years must elapse from the date of violation of the duty of immigration to issue a valid passport or of a visa issued by the Ministry of Justice. And in the 5 years before the application date, is there a fine for someone who has violated the law more than 3 times? Speed violations, parking violations, things like that are excluded. Still, such things should not be committed. 7 years have to pass since the date of departure after receiving a compulsory eviction order. Moreover, 5 years have to have passed since the date of departure after receiving the departure order. Being sentenced to a specific violent crime abroad, such as murder, kidnapping or threatening, blackmailing, fraud, voice phishing, drug crime, makes you ineligible. People other than that can be considered well-behaved.
So, well-behaved means someone who hasn't violated the law. Then, can an individual lose his permanent residency after having been granted it?
네, 있죠.
Yes, it is possible. Permanent residency is necessary to live in Korea. But if you go abroad and don't come back to Korea, there is no reason a permanent residency be given to you, right? Then, the condition is re-entry exemption period. So, if you do not enter the Republic of Korea within 2 years from the date of departure, or within the period of re-entry permit, your permanent residence will be lost. But there are exceptions. There can be various exceptions, such as hospitalization for unavoidable reasons, typhoon, etc. In that case, it is possible for those who have entered the country beyond the permitted period to enter within 6 months from the expiration date of the permitted period. Also, there might be cases where the flight or ship is delayed or cancelled. In this case, if it does not exceed 10 days of the permitted period, the lost permanent residence status can be acquired again.
So, yes, permanent residency can be lost, but depending on the circumstances, there are exceptions. Moreover, the COVID-19 period lasted for quite some time. Does this also classify as an exception?
아, 당연하죠.
Of course, because COVID-19 is a pandemic situation. This is also an unavoidable event. So if you can prove it is due to the COVID-19 situation, your permanent residency can be maintained even if you enter Korea many months later.
Yes, those who had difficulty entering the country due to COVID-19 should keep that in mind. After having looked into permanent residency, we are going to move on and learn about naturalization. Mr. Lee, I heard there are many kinds of naturalization. What are some types that correspond with multicultural families?
Yes, there are 3 kinds of naturalization. There is general naturalization, simplified naturalization, and special naturalization. The multicultural family falls into the simplified naturalization category. So let me explain simplified naturalization. Simplified naturalization targets foreigners born in Korea for 2 generations, such as married immigrants or people whose parents were Korean citizens.
You mentioned that multicultural families can apply for simple naturalization. Could you explain in more detail what are the conditions for applying for this simple naturalization?
간이 기한은 대한민국 민법상 성년이어야 합니다. 그리고 또 두 번째는
The applicant for simple naturalization must be an adult under the civil law of Korea. And secondly, they should be well behaved, as mentioned earlier. Thirdly, you must be able to make a living based on your assets or skills, without relying on your family to make a living. That means you should be able to live without anyone's help. Next, the fourth one is to understand Korean language skills, Korean customs, and basic knowledge as a people. This is also the 5th stage of the social integration program. 5th, the spouse is a foreigner who is a citizen of the Republic of Korea, and he or she must have an address in Korea for more than 2 years while married to the spouse. And even if 3 years have passed since marrying the spouse, this applies to those who have an address in Korea continuously for more than 1 year while in their married state. This means that even if you are divorced, if you have an address in Korea for 1 year, after 3 years of marriage, you can still apply for naturalization.
Yes, there are various conditions and a lot of documents necessary for naturalization, which makes it hard to thoroughly explain them here. Mr. Lee, you do offer help in order to prepare all necessary documents for naturalization, right?
당연하죠. 오늘도 상담이 지금 예약돼 있고요. 저희한테 전화로
Of course. I have a consultation appointment today. Some people ask us over the phone and say, we prepared these kinds of documents. Do we need any more? So, there are cases where you check and say, this is missing, so you have to attach it and submit it. Some people make a reservation for consultation, come to the office with a checklist, and we'll help them prepare the documents.
The individuals who are preparing to apply for naturalization can receive help preparing the complicated documents, making the process very easy and thorough. However, I heard that you must take a test to get naturalized. Could you elaborate a little more on that?
기한은 아까 영주권에서 보듯이 사회 통합 프로그램 5단계 기본
Permanent residency and naturalization applications vary depending on the type of visa you have, and there are many exceptions. So, I think you can save time and effort by consulting and preparing with a professional. So, don't worry about the cost. Please contact me anytime and call me to prepare it.
Yes, 40 questions for the written test and 5 questions for the oral test. So to pass, you'll have to get more than 60 points. Mr. Lee, can you say a word to the viewers who are preparing to apply for naturalization?
As we saw in permanent residency earlier, naturalization requires completing the basic course of the 5 stages of the social integration program, and also completing the advanced course for another 20 hours. Then, those who are within 2 years can take the comprehensive evaluation test, 40 questions on the written test and 5 questions on the oral test. So if you score more than 60 points, you'll be accepted.
Yes, thank you. Lastly, if there's anything you would like to say to the viewers of Cosmos TV, please do so.
Viewers of Cosmos TV, I hope you are always healthy and have a happy life in Korea. If you are worried about permanent residency or naturalization, please do not hesitate to consult a nearby professional. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. So far, together with Mr. Lee, we were able to learn more about permanent residency and naturalization. Thank you very much for taking the time to come give this interview despite your very busy schedule. Viewers of Cosmos TV, permanent residency and naturalization require various conditions and the preparation of many documents. Before thinking it's too hard, first, it will be wise to visit and receive consultation at a nearby administrative office. Today we invited Mr. Lee to learn about permanent residency and naturalization. Next time, in the second episode of Journey with Cosmos TV and Multicultural Family Rights Season 3, we will prepare more content that is essential for multicultural families. Everyone, please do not forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, much love.